Had Halo 4 been the final major Halo game in the Master Chief story arc, I would have been perfectly satisfied. With Cortana no longer in the picture, and with the appearance of every major threat in the galaxy either eliminated or on the run, Master Chief could finally retire from a lifelong career serving the UNSC. But 343 Industries was still determined to deliver that perfect Halo title, the one that would finally earn them the title of the true keepers of the Halo Flame. But would Halo 5 Guardians live up to that challenge? Or would the Halo Flame finally be extinguished? Hey guys, it's the Tyrant here. In October of 2015, 343 Industries launched their second major AAA Halo title, Halo 5 Guardians. Leading up to its release, fans were treated to an ARG titled Hunt the Truth, pitting the Master Chief against a brand new soldier, Spartan Locke. From first appearances, we're given the impression that Locke is some sort of bounty hunter who's out to get the Chief, and we're left completely in the dark on who's in the wrong here. The premise seems interesting, while also being questionable at the same time. Could our favorite series icon really be on the run from the UNSC? And if so, why? What could possibly drive the Master Chief into going rogue? This seems like a major sidestep from traditional Halo. And when the game was finally released, that couldn't have been more true, despite the ARG seemingly having very little to do with the actual campaign itself. It's hard to say exactly what 343 was truly aiming for here. Now, I'm going to take a second and state that I already have a review of Halo 5 on this site, and I'll post a link in the description below, so we're only going to focus on the main points here. Like with Halo 4, Halo 5 Guardians improved on a number of things from its predecessor, while also completely tanking in other areas. The campaign itself was a mixed bag. On a positive note, the Promethean faction received a massive overhaul, and this was definitely a major plus. Promethean Knights are no longer the unstoppable alien juggernauts appearing around every corner. This time around, we saw them far less in the game, their quote-unquote superpowers had been drastically nerfed compared to Halo 4, and they were also given weak points this time around, making them far more easier to take down. The Prometheans themselves finally received a middle-class creature, the Soldier, and even the Crawlers this time around weren't so pesky to battle, only having to deal with a few at a time, rather than entire swarms of them bringing the entire game to a grinding halt. Promethean weapons had also been redesigned to make them more unique, rather than having them simply be carbon copies of different weapons with just a different flavor. The game mechanics themselves had also received a massive buff, with armor abilities finally being a thing of the past, and replaced by a universal thruster pack capable of allowing players to dash, plow through walls, and deliver deadly attacks from above. Even weapons now felt more useful, with most of them having the iron sight capability, and also sprint was now unlimited. And while the concept of sprint remains to be a dividing feature among Halo fans, at least this time around, we didn't have to be concerned about the timing of it. Overall map designs both in multiplayer and campaign were larger and gave a much bigger sense of freedom. The squad system had also been added, giving the player the opportunity to fight side by side with 3 other Spartans while you, the player, were pushed up against extreme numbers of enemies and bosses. So, for all that, why did this story have to be so terrible? Let's start with just the beginning. Right off the bat from the first mission, we learned that the Prometheans are still a major threat, despite the Didact supposedly being defeated in the previous game. With both the Didact and the Composer being gone, why are they here? How did they get here? Who's leading them? And why doesn't this seem to be a top concern for our characters? And the characters. Within 2 missions, we are introduced to a whopping cast of 8 that makes up both Blue Team and Fire Team Osiris. On the Blue Team front, we learn that the Master Chief is reunited with his lifelong Spartan brother and his 2 sisters. But how the hell did they get there? Where have they been all this time? And why are they just now showing up? And before I go into this further, yes, I realize that most of these questions were answered in media outside of the game, and that's one of the huge problems this game has, relying too much on outside content. I want to make it abundantly clear that while having an expanded universe is fine and even encouraged, when you have to rely on a series of books and movies just to understand the basics on what's going on in a video game, that's not okay. Not everyone who plays video games wants to take the time to read in a seemingly endless series of books that may or may not be canon, let alone spend the extra money. A game should always feel complete, not like you're missing a huge chunk of the story. And it's not like every other Halo game is perfect in this regard. I mean, don't get me wrong, in Halo 2, we never found out how Sergeant Johnson returned alive from the Halo ring, despite Cortana claiming that she and the Master Chief were the only ones left at the end of the first Halo game. We never learned how Johnson and Keyes beat the Master Chief back to Earth from Delta Halo, even though the game makes it seem like the Master Chief left first. And we never learned what role that engineer played in Halo 3 ODST when it came to the actual Covenant human war. The story sort of dead ends after that. So don't get me wrong, gaps in the story are definitely there, assuming you're only playing the games, but it has never been so jarring as it was in Halo 5 Guardians. And let's take a second to acknowledge the fact that Halo 5 featured 8 main characters this time around.
Confirmed.
Were they trying to make a Halo game or a Roland Emmerich movie? We never get to know any of them really, and even though we're at least familiar with Spartan Buck, he's made a side character instead of heading up Fireteam Osiris. We don't even get a decent monologue from him explaining why he went from being an ODST to a Spartan. And as you're going through the game itself, I noticed that even though the missions themselves are bigger in size in terms of the overall environments, none of the battles ever felt like something new or different. Move a few feet, fight a new wave of enemies. Move a few more feet, fight a new wave of enemies. Hell, by the time I got to the mission The Breaking, I realized how similar it was to the library in Halo Combat Evolved. You're fighting endless waves of enemies that aren't even really alive, and individually have nothing to gain or lose from fighting you. Nothing. If anything, I found The Breaking more tedious than the library simply because your enemies just keep warping in out of nowhere. By the time I was done with the game's 15th mission, I felt like this had to have been the longest Halo game on record. I was expecting at least a 10-hour upload for my full campaign and cutscenes video. It was only 5 hours long. A game that was 5 hours long felt like 10. That's how badly these missions dragged on. And when you finally make it to the end of the campaign, you find out it was all for nothing. No major changes occurred because of you. No major character developments. The Master Chief and Spartan Locke simply shake hands while Cortana gains control over the Guardians and begins policing the galaxy. If Master Chief had simply not gotten involved at all, and the same goes for Spartan Locke, the outcome would have been the same. And thus brings the conclusion to a one-act game with no character development at all. How sad is that? After slogging your way through 15 missions, that's the conclusion we get? Even Halo 2 had a more satisfying ending. At least there we saw the Arbiter realize the truth about the Halo rings and form an alliance with his longtime enemies, the humans. What was achieved in Halo 5? I find it generally destabilizing that 343 could do so much right for Halo 5 in terms of the new features and mechanics, yet still fail so miserably when it came to the overall delivery of the story. I honestly believe here that they were simply trying to make Halo 5 bigger than it could be. You're constantly jumping around from one place to the next with a squad of folks you barely even care about. I feel like there was a lot more that was supposed to be there, but ultimately they had to cut it short for time. And that really couldn't have been more evident than when it came to the initial bare-bones release of the game itself. No Forge, only a few modes to choose from in multiplayer, and a disappointing campaign. Now if you fast forward a year, yes, they have added a ton of awesome things into Halo 5 Guardians. We now have Warzone Firefight, which is a game mode I have been having a blast with throughout this entire series, and even different degrees of difficulty that you can experiment with. We've got new enemies, new vehicles, new weapons and vehicles variants, giving us access to by far the largest arsenal of toys we've ever had in a Halo game. And now we also have the most expansive and most powerful Forge we've ever seen that's not only available to play on Xbox One, but also we can finally forge on our own PCs using Windows 10. Halo 5 Guardians has come so far in the last year, which is why it's such a complete and total tragedy that the initial release was so under par for a Halo game. Had Microsoft been willing to put off the release of Halo 5 for another year, they could have not only had all of those new features built in from the get-go, but they could have also focused on building a more complete and satisfying campaign. These are just some of the things that they need to take to heart when it comes to their next major Halo title. And fortunately, they're still in the building phase. Anything can still be changed, and nothing is concrete. That doesn't just include the gameplay and features, but also the story. When I envisioned where Bungie would have gone with Halo, I picture a game very similar to Destiny. A game with a vast, expansive universe that can be explored and can continue to grow over time. I mean, think about it a sec. Really think about it. Halo is built on a vast, incredible universe with so many places we have yet to see. So many experiences that we have yet to feel. We still have at least 6 other Halo rings out there, and we know from their holograms in Halo 3 that they all contain very different environments and landscapes. Wouldn't it be cool if you could visit all of them? Or how about another alien homeworld? We've already seen Sanghelios, but what about the Grunt homeworld, or the Jackals? Or maybe even a new species entirely? Perhaps we could even visit another Forerunner structure, or their other shield worlds, or maybe even return to the Ark like we are supposed to, at least in Halo Wars 2. And don't forget, per the end of Halo 5 Guardians, even the UNSC has tons of planetary colony worlds that we can explore. And rather than being a game that's simply released and left as is, expansions could be released over time to introduce additional stories, missions, and scenarios to continue expanding on the Halo universe rather than just having one little campaign released every 3 years or so. And this would also give players a chance to create their own story by finding different avenues and different missions that could vary from playthrough to playthrough, giving the game near infinite replay value. And if you really think about it, it's totally possible. Just look at where they're already going with Halo and how many comparisons we can draw to Destiny. Especially with Halo 5 introducing larger environments with way more enemies and even your own squad to help you out. You wouldn't even have to embark on these journeys alone. You could go co-op with friends, or you could play solo and perhaps even switch between players. Now, for the record, I wouldn't include things like leveling or grinding. Creating your own adventure should be less tedious and more centered around exploration and creating your own story. And don't worry, multiplayer fans, I haven't left you out either. The game could basically divide it into 2 modes, PvE and PvP. PvE players could be treated to a vast, new, and ongoing Halo experience, while PvP players could face off in classic multiplayer matches like Arena, Capture the Flag, Warzone, and even Firefight, both new and classic. And for the record, as rec packs are making their way more and more into the mainstream, even those could work in this new Halo game. Gaining access to awesome new weapons and vehicles via rec packs is fine, but in the future, these are things that need to be earned solely in-game rather than being based only on the size of the player's wallet. I dubbed this quote-unquote Dalo hybrid Halo Reclamation. The next Halo game has the chance to become the definitive Halo game, and one that can last and continuously impress and entertain Halo fans for years and years to come. The track record for 343 at this point has been questionable. We know damn well that these are folks who love Halo and love their fans equally, and we can't fault them for giving it their best, but at the end of the day, they still aren't Bungie either. This is their chance to show the world what they can really do, and what Halo really means to the world. The next Halo game can't just be legendary or mythic, it needs to be everlasting. It needs to make a permanent mark in not only the gaming universe, but more specifically, the Halo universe. So this officially concludes my series on the rise and fall of Halo. And this isn't just an ordinary series on my site. This is a series I wanted to dedicate to both the fans and 343 Industries alike. This is a series I wanted us to all learn from and to help us understand what made Halo so immersive to begin with and how to keep the legend alive for years and even decades to come. And I can't just do this on my own. If you enjoyed this series and feel that this could very well be your ticket to the next perfect Halo game, I need you to help me spread the word. Share it with your family, share it with your friends, because the only way we can make the changes we need to happen actually happen is to get this conversation started. We need the entire world to hear it. And I want to take the time to thank everyone who took their own time to hear it, to hear the message, and hope that it inspires you. Today, we conclude a saga that traveled through the entire history of Halo, past, present, and future. Where it started, how it grew, the troubles it faced, where it is now, and where it could go. I want to thank each and every one of you so much for joining me on this journey every step of the way. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope this series gave you a bit more insight on the progression of the Halo franchise, and hopefully it gives you inspiration leaning towards its future. Please let me know your own thoughts and opinions in the comments below, or you can let me know on both Facebook and Twitter. Links to my social media accounts can be found in the description of this video, and I'm not going to lie, Twitter is by far the best way to reach out to me for the quickest response. And if you like this video, please be sure to hit that subscribe button for more video game related content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on MythicTyrant.com. 2016 has been an insane year for everyone across the globe, and I wish you all the very best in 2017. Happy New Year, guys and gals, and as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.